cannot claim that it's impossible, but it is possible. But the lifetime of in the lifetime of not a human being, but maybe a few centuries or a few generations, it may not be possible. So it's the amount of time that matters. Now, if I'm doing an investigation and I want to find some data, and if it's going to take me a few hundred years to actually find out what happened a few hours ago or a few days ago, then it's a waste, right? So big data comes into the picture there. It is something that can reduce that time of investigation from a few hundred years to a few hours. So that is the technology which comes in terms of big data. So that's a very interesting topic. Now, whenever it comes to cybercrime, you have to pin responsibilities. It's not just cybercrime, any crime, right? You have to pin responsibilities. Who is responsible for ensuring cybercrime doesn't happen? Let's hear from you. Who should ensure that cybercrime does not happen?
User itself.
Good. One is a service provider. Anybody else?
User itself.
Cybercell, right? So these are agencies. The service provider is an agency. The cybercell is an agency.
User itself.
Very good. Somebody is thinking here. Some people are not sleeping. I can see that. Okay. So the first and foremost, of course, is the government. Okay. You investigate. You find the guy, and then the government says, "Oh, we don't have a law against this guy." What do you do about it? He's going to walk free and start doing the next job, right? So you need very strong cyber laws, some of which are coming up, some of which are already there, some of which are coming up. But that is a necessary framework that needs to be there. Now, when I say government, it's not just about the government, it also is about the government agencies like the police, the cyber cells that you were talking about, all those agencies which investigate these things. The second most important responsibility is on organizations. So now, think about the way it's broken up. When I say government, it's actually a complete, the world or the country or whatever. It's a bigger unit, right? Within the bigger unit, we have organizations. So what are these organizations? These organizations could be banks. They could be other financial institutions. They could be a hospital. They could be anything that you interact with through online, right? So all of them have a certain responsibility of ensuring that you do not lose because of their messing up with their framework. So if you are going to interact with them digitally, they had better be very clear on what they, on the compliance. So basically for organizations, it is what we call in our so-called IT parlance is basically compliance. So they have to be security compliant. If they are not security compliant, they should not be out there talking to you on the net. And finally, as some people rightly said, it's you, the individuals, right? Now, from now on, and in fact, initially also, my whole talk is about the only people whom I can influence. I can't influence the government, I can't influence the organizations, but I can definitely influence you to some extent at least. So, what can actually, before we talk about what you can do, there are myths that this is from your perspective, okay? This is a thought process which is wrong, or this is a thought process that every individual has today, okay? A cyber criminal is not interested in me. Why? I'm just a face in the crowd. There's so many people around. What am I? I'm just a small, nobody knows me. My friends circle know me. My relatives know me. Other than that, nobody knows me. So I'm just a face in the crowd, right? Okay. The second problem. I don't have anything to offer to this cyber criminal. after people with a lot of tons of money, right? If I don't have tons of money, why should a cyber criminal even bother with me? If even after that, there is some stupid cyber criminal sitting there who wants to attack me, just for the fun of it, okay? I can't do anything to stop it. Right? I just am stuck, I have nothing, I am a nobody. I'm a nobody, I'm not a technological guy, he says, okay? I'm not a technological person. So therefore, many of you might actually think that way. You still hold smartphones, at least he doesn't. Okay? You don't, right? Ah, that's what. So he's a smart guy. Okay? So, but the point is, I'm not tech savvy, I don't have that much of technological knowledge, so therefore, I can't do anything even if he comes after me. Right? Now, all these are complete myths. That is you talking about, I am a nobody. Now, let me boost your self-confidence to say, every single cyber criminal in the world is looking for only you. You are the best target for every single cyber criminal. Why? How has the concept of cybercrime changed? Now this is, I'm sure, how many of you are Bengalis here? You'll love this picture. Guess why? Right. Okay. So, the earlier concept of a cyber criminal was a guy who would sit and try to hack a bank, hack a big company, hack into a stuff and things like that. Right? Khatam. That concept is gone. Now you love this. The cyber criminal is a guy who loves this. Wow, I mean, as many fish as I can in my water. I'm not being picky choosy about, oh, this nondescript guy around here, I don't have to bother about him. Every nondescript guy for him is a source of data. And that, for him, is much, much more than trying to rob a bank. Takes enormous time to rob a bank. Takes less than a second to rob you of your identity. Okay. So, this is a fact of life. Okay? This is a fact of life. Facebook knows more about you than your parents, your spouse, your anybody. If you are on Facebook, Facebook knows more about you. By the way, I'll tell you a very interesting thing, interesting fact. In today's date, touch wood, if you don't have to take it, but suppose you had to go and take a loan from a financial institution. Earlier, what they used to do is they used to do a background check of yours. Right? They used to find out, can this guy pay me back? Can this guy do this? Does he have assets? Does this person have tons of money at the back and still taking loan? All that kind of stuff. Today, you know what they do? This is, sit across the table, sir. There is a monitor right in front of him. What's your name? Facebook. Tuck, 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 tuck. He just checks. They have parameters set. You will get a loan or you won't get a loan based on your Facebook profile. Believe me, I'm not joking. It's a fact. Okay? They look at your Facebook profile and they can figure out whether you're a guy who's going to pay back the loan or run with it. Okay? So that is the kind of situation you are in. And you are helping them. And how are you helping them again? Boy, I have my mobile, I have my contacts, I think I am the only person who possesses that contacts. No, sir. Every contact that you add to your mobile phone, it's like that song from the police, wherever you go, I'm watching you kind of thing. There are people who are taking your contacts away. And can you guess how? It's you who is doing it. Every time you install an app in an Android phone, it asks you some questions. Everybody says yes. Yes. Can I use your contacts? Yes. Can I use your photographs? Yes. Can I use anything that is your camera? Yes. And say yes to everything. And you know, now that phone doesn't belong to you, it belongs to those app builders. Okay? So now that's the scenario that is there today. I am trying to frighten you and you are laughing. So right. So you can't stop them, you think, right? Wrong. You can at least try to stop them. You can do a lot in order to bring them down. Okay? And now I'm going to tell you how. Right? The first, you need to be conscious of what in your identity or in your life is private and what is public. It is very unfortunate that people get carried away and start, you know, kind of giving out private information. I don't mean private in the sense of, you know, what private means, but I mean in terms of information that can be used to steal your identity. Right? One of the things, for example, I mean, you go and register on a site, they say, okay, give me your phone number, give me your this thing. The question that you need to ask is, why do they need my phone number? I don't need to give my phone number. I mean, this site is not going to contact me, right? I'm just going to download a software. I mean, I'm not going to buy the software in any case. 90% of the time, I'm not buying that software, right? You're not buying it. So, if you're not buying it, why are you giving them your contact number? But you're giving them their contact number. You're giving them your official email ID maybe. Okay? End of the day, these are data which you are providing to them and they will be very happy to accept that data and give you a free software. Because they are not interested in making money out of the software. They are interested in making money out of your data. Okay? Next is something very similar. I hereby read and whatever is written here, any junk. How many of you have actually gone through the, I mean, typically they write very long ELAs, right? They make it long enough that after the first 2 paragraphs, you say, what the hell, I have to finish this job. They just say, okay, right? You accept. And what you accept, they may make you accept a lot of things which you actually didn't mean to accept, right? So, hard work, but you should still read through those license agreements. So, the so-called license agreements. I say so-called because there are sometimes they're not even license agreements. They're just very cryptographic, or rather cryptic ways of telling you, I'm taking your data. Thank you. Right? Please do not trust every site that you visit. Okay? So there is some amount of faith you can keep in certain organizations up to now. Well, I mean, like they have not sold out yet. So there are, when you go to a site, if you see that you are doing a financial transaction or you are giving out your identity or something, and they don't even have a certificate, SSL certificate on, means they've just not been verified. Okay? So don't trust those sites at all for any kind of financial transactions or identities. Yeah, I mean, it's not the other way around. It's not like a necessary and sufficient condition. The thing is, it is necessary, but it is not sufficient, right? So I can get an SSL certificate and still take your money. So, but still be careful. You need to be careful at least at that level that they don't take you for right. And this is the most tempting part of all the things that you do, right? I was still WhatsApping. I mean, with all due respect to the previous speaker, I was still WhatsApping till I got on the stage. Right? So we do that. Do WhatsApp, do communicate, nothing wrong with it. but be very careful about what kind of information you give out to others. Okay? Sometimes that information can actually backfire in terms of data security. Of course, passwords. I mean, people, the most common password in the world. Can anyone guess what it is?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
No, it's a difficult password. It's not an easy password. I tell you, it's a reasonably, see, there are certain rules which are set, okay, for passwords. You say, you have to have a capital letter, you have to have a small letter, you have to have a special letter, and you have to have
Number.
a number, right?
It should be at
And
least
so, yeah, so name and the date of birth is still not, is still unique, it's still unique in the sense that it's your name and your date of birth, right? There's a standard one. Capital P @ SSW0RD. Wow! Fantastic password. It has everything. It has everything. Right? And it does nothing. I mean, there are people who, when they hack passwords, they use dictionary words, right? This is one of the first dictionary words they use. Because you know, there's some guy out there who will have this password. 100% sure, right? So, capital P @ SSW0RD is the most common password which exists in the world. Okay? And so, happily, the other point is, wow, you have a very cryptic password. Fantastic. Okay? Your friend says, boss, emergency. I need to get access to your mail. Okay, yeah, this is my email ID, this is my password. Then, I mean, you have broken the cardinal rule of security. Never share your password, independent of who it is. I mean, independent of who it is. Never share your password. Why? For two major reasons. One, I mean, it could get passed on. But two, more importantly, it will get passed on to all your other places where you write passwords. Because 90% of people use the same password for everything that they use. Right? So if my email password is XYZ, you can bet a tenner that my bank password is also exactly that. So all I need to get is your bank account number. That's it, finished. So please don't pass around your password and be happy about it. Okay? So again, I mean, I just mentioned that you have to differentiate between a certified and a non-certified site and so on. So that is one other thing that helps you in being careful. And I mean, for those who have credit cards and so on, credit, debit cards, whatever it is, you need to be extremely careful about how or where you use them. It becomes, it's not only about a credit card being stolen or a credit card being used for purchases. A credit card can actually be used to trace back a lot of other things. Okay? So, issue is, if you are not careful with any of these things, I mean, you are helping cyber criminals, and therefore you are actually, what do they call it? Something to the crime, right? What is it? You are an accomplice to the crime. Okay? So you won't be jailed, but then I mean, like, a lot of people. In short, please observe what is basically called an internet or communication hygiene. Internet or communication hygiene basically means, being careful about what you do and making sure that neither you are affected nor are people who somehow or the other are connected to you are affected. Right? So it's a difficult job. What basically happens is, see, there's someone who said that you start with a you start with a thing, do it a multiple number of times, and then it becomes a habit, right? And someone else said it's very easy to pick up bad habits. It's very difficult to pick up good habits, right? Habits come very fast, only if they are bad. If you have good habits, it takes a lot of time and effort to do it. But please ensure that you take that time and effort to do that. Okay? So that is basically the message that I wanted to give. So question is now, can we think of this question now? Do we really need to get paranoid about cybercrime and so on? The point is, yes, we don't need to get paranoid about it. I really don't think we need to get paranoid about it. What we really need to get is a little more vigilant. Start thinking, when you start using something, start thinking whether I'm doing the, I need to do it or not. Am I trying to, I download I mean the worst part of it is it happens when, even with me, my son gets hold of my phone and connects to the wireless and then downloads a game. The game wants access to my camera, access to my contacts. And
Location.
what is the game going to do with my contacts? I just can't think of any single thing that a game can do with my contacts, but it does ask for it. And he of course presses yes, because he needs to get to the game, right? So this is something that is a malice, and we are not able to get across it, simply because of the fact that sometimes we are in a hurry, sometimes it has just become that habit, right? So try to kind of inculcate a few good habits and see if that might help him, and then instead of being accomplice to the crime, you might actually become crime fighters. Thank you. Short, I know, but that's all I had for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sir, you said you wanted to frighten us. Okay, I think I can frighten everyone. What you should do, you go to google.com, then you log in, then you open my account or settings so called. There is an option, a menu there, my activities. Once you go and check that out, I can tell you that you should be frightened out. It knows more about you than you know about yourself.
Exactly.
Do everyone, please do that.
In fact, to be very honest, the amount of data Google collects, I did not mention Google, sorry, good that you reminded me, the amount of data Google collects, almost nobody collects.
Exactly.
Because Google is everywhere. And why I didn't mention Google, I mean, I'm just saying this as an afterthought, by the way. Why I didn't mention Google is because if I badmouth Google right now, they'll know about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have the tea breaks. Let's make it for the 10 minutes. So tea is waiting outside, and then we'll come back at 55.
Or some other, you are spending something else, 3 weeks or something you are supposed to spend there, right? So then I found out, I thought that Gautam has interest in, more towards classical domain. Classical cryptography, by the way, ISI is the best. If you really ask about classical cryptography, now they are getting into quantum domain also, you will not get anything better than what you get in ISI program. So they are well recognized. Now, a little more about ISI. Many of you may not be knowing about ISI program. I just wanted to tell you, see what kind of talent India is bestowed with. You must have heard about Prashant Mahalanobis. He was contemporary of Sri Ramanujan. In fact, describes personal incidences with Ramanujan. And then he came back here at his home, started this ISI Kolkata, Indian Statistical Institute. So when I was doing my PhD abroad, I found every department you go to in USA, there will be a Rao, there will be, all these people having roots in ISI Kolkata. Then I used to, and all of them are placed, almost all the best statisticians from the world, a big number of them are from India, almost all of them owe their root to ISI Kolkata. Then I realized that there must be something special about ISI Kolkata. Then later on I found out about the speciality of ISI Kolkata, and I request you on your own dig out about ISI Kolkata. Probably, now statistics other people have also picked up, but even now it has a dominant influence all over the globe. That was the first phase. Second phase, I came to know more about Calcutta and ISI Calcutta a little later. See, there was a conference on quantum computation in HRI. From Poland, one gentleman comes and asks, who is C.R. Rao's student here? And there was this old man, Professor Partha Sarathi, a great expert in India, search about him. An old man, around 80, he says, I am. He said, the most entangled state used for cryptography purpose now came from Kolkata. And that was invented in the context of agriculture. Divide a big piece of land into small pieces, distribute different kind of seeds to optimize agricultural output. In that context, C.R. Rao, who is probably now 94-year-old, probably one of the top 10 statisticians of the world, even now writes papers. The most entangled state was invented right here in Calcutta. Then that was not enough, and that was invented in ISI in the context of agricultural statistics. Now, then it turns out there was another identity, which is very much used in quantum computation nowadays, it's called Bhattacharya identity. That was done by another statistician, mathematician, Bhattacharya, about whom I found out from Professor Nanda. I got that paper. It's a small paper which has come out in, I think, some journal in Calcutta around 56. A very, very big result, which is being used for. So my request is, learn about your own roots. And here we have a young man, great expert. He is a very interesting person, Gautam. He went to USA for PhD, because of some reason came back. When you come back from USA, you sort of give up. He came here, got up again, and lo and behold, writing 8 students, one of the big names in cryptography. Now he is getting into the quantum world. I request Gautam to deliver his talk.
I promise that I will not take it long, because we are already running late. I'll try to finish it within half an hour. So as the title says, the talk is on aspects of quantum cryptography. I'm sure from the morning you have been hearing a lot about cryptography, computing, both classical and quantum domain. So briefly, if we divide the crypto world, there will be 2 major sub-worlds within the crypto world. One will be the private key cryptography, right, or symmetric. The other will be the public key cryptography or asymmetric, right. So all of you know about these things, right? Anybody who does not know what is private key and what is public key cryptography, please raise your hand. Okay, so quite a few. So I will quickly summarize. So okay, so cryptography has many goals. So one of the major goals of cryptography is to provide data security or privacy, meaning that when a data is being transmitted from some sender to some receiver, then nobody other than the sender and receiver will know the meaning of the data. Okay, they can access the data, they can look at the data, they can analyze the data, but they cannot understand the meaning of the data. So data will be random looking to them. So the way you do, typically, you have an encryption function which takes a secret key K and you have a message M. It gives you the ciphertext C. Okay. So that goes to the channel and the same ciphertext C is received, and then you have a decryption function which takes the key K and you get the message out. Of course, in the channel there could be errors, right? There could be errors in the channel that will be due to the noise or anything else that can be taken care of by the error correcting code. So because error correcting codes exist, we can assume that the channel is error free, and whatever ciphertext was sent, the same was received. Now, there are two broad categories as I was mentioning. So let's say we call it the encryption key and let's say we call it the decryption key. Fine. So for private or symmetric key, the encryption key and the decryption key are the same. Okay, it's the same key K shared between the sender and the receiver. For public key, they are not the same. But still, when we apply the decryption function parameterized with a different key KD operating on C, it will give you back M. That's the requirement. That's how these E and D functions will be designed. Okay, mathematically. So you can prove it as mathematical theorem once you are given the description of these functions, that whether that correctness assumption is achieved or not. But that is another story. That's not what I am going into. Now, you see, for private and symmetric key, this common key K has to be shared between the sender and the receiver. Whereas for public key, no key sharing is needed. Why? Because typically the receiver in the public key domain generates both the encryption key and the decryption key. Okay, so both are generated at the receiver end. Generated at receiver end, let's see. Then what does receiver do? The receiver keeps the KD as private. Recall in the previous talk also Sriram was mentioning about making something private and making something public, right? That was in a much more general social context. But here, in the technical domain of cryptography as well, in the public key paradigm, we keep the decryption key private. Okay, so you don't leak it to anyone. And you make the encryption key public. That's KE. So in other words, the potential receiver will generate the pairs of this key using mathematical algorithms, and he or she will publish this encryption key in the public domain in his or her website, or maybe it will be broadcasted to potential senders, so that anyone in the whole world, whoever wants to send any data secretly to this particular recipient, will use this particular encryption key. Fine. Once the receiver receives the encrypted data, the receiver will use his or her own private key KD to decrypt the data, okay? Because these things work. So now if you ask that, if we reverse the thing, if the receiver wants to send data back to the sender in an encrypted manner, then what the receiver will do? So let's say A and B are there, right? So A will have its own, let's say, encryption key and decryption key, and B will have its own encryption key and decryption key, right? So when A wants to send a data to B, then A will use this encryption key, which is public parameter of B, and encode, and B will decrypt using this. When B wants to send, B will use this parameter, which is public for it, encrypt and send the data, right? So it is always receiver initiated, but anyone can act as the receiver. Now there are few features of this particular scenario. Suppose we are talking about a communication network, okay? There are a lot of hosts are there. So you can think of n different machines, n different servers, n different individuals connected, okay, in a LAN or WAN, whatever. Now, if they want to use private or symmetric key communication securely for n different users, how many private key would you need? How many different private and symmetric keys would you need? N. Why? If I have two guys, I need only one key, K, right? Let's say KAB. But if I have a guy C, then I need KAC, which is different. Then I need KBC. So for three guys, we need three keys. But if I have four guy D, then I need KBD, I need KCD, I need KAD. right? So n choose 2. For n guys, here we need n choose 2, which is roughly of the order of n square. Here, each of the n guys can generate his or her own pair of encryption and decryption key. One of them will be public, one of them will be private. So 2 per individual, so it's 2n, right? So when the network is huge, when n is of the order of few thousands or lakhs or crores of individuals or host machines, then this O of n square is a much larger number than twice of n, right? So we see that this is much more easy to manage. Okay. First of all, no sharing is needed. Second, low key overhead. So public key has both the advantages. Here the basic problem is not only the overhead but how you can share the common key k. Because it's a common key k, if A and B are together in a room, in a closed door room, and they share the key k and then they go apart, then they can communicate. But if from the very beginning they are far apart, let's say 2 different continents, and then they decide, they call each other and say, okay, from tomorrow we are going to use encrypted communication, right? Then how do they go about it? So it becomes an egg-chicken problem, because now they have to securely transmit this secret key, common secret key k in this domain. Now if they could do it, they could do the message, then why do the key and why do the message again, right? So it becomes a circular problem. Now in that scenario, this public key and asymmetric key rescues us, because it does not require anything to send or transmit. So you could use the public key crypto system for all the communications, but in practical scenario that is not done. The reason is, though it has these two major advantages, that no pre-sharing is needed and less key overhead, but still the mathematical operations that are involved inside the encryption and decryption function, they are very time consuming. So for real world applications, so you want to buy something in the internet, right? You cannot wait forever. You want to do a bank transaction, you cannot wait forever. So for real time operations, till today public and asymmetric key crypto systems are not that good as private or symmetric key crypto systems. So what is typically done in the practical world is the best of the two. You combine the best of the two. So in the very beginning, at the first session, you use public key or asymmetric key protocol, and in that session the message that you transmit is nothing but the common key k that will be used in future private or symmetric key communication. Okay. So the target is to use faster private and symmetric key communication, but before you do that, you need to share the key k. So you use that key, common key k, the future key k, as the message, and you encrypt that message, that means that key, and transmit using public key protocols, right, where you do not need any pre-sharing. Now, though public key protocols take a lot of time, but because it is only at the beginning of the session, it's only one time. Once you establish the key, you can now transmit gigabytes and terabytes of data. So it pays off. Okay. So that's typically the scenario. Now the problem is with progress in quantum computing, with the development of quantum algorithms, particularly for Shor's algorithm, most of the public and asymmetric cryptosystem algorithms are broken. Okay. So in a quantum computer, okay, so most of the security for the public and asymmetric key protocols, they are based on computational hardness of some problem. For example, the factoring problem, okay, or discrete log problem that many of you know. So there are some hard problems which are hard for classical computers to solve, but there are polynomial time quantum algorithms that can solve those problems very fast. And due to that, those algorithms can break most of the public key crypto systems and asymmetric crypto systems. So in the quantum world, this paradigm is no longer there. Fortunately, private and symmetric key crypto systems are still somewhat secure in the quantum domain. Okay, you still have a quantum advantage in terms of search space due to Grover's algorithm and all that, but more or less it is secure and practically usable even in the quantum domain. But in absence of this, how do you share the common secret key? Okay. So there comes quantum cryptography, or one major aspect of quantum cryptography, which is called quantum key distribution. Okay. And the goal of quantum key distribution is to use quantum mechanical methods to share a classical secret key, a classical bit string, a classical message, which is the common key K, this K. So this is a classical bit string, to share this bit string between two individuals using quantum mechanical procedure, so that this can be used in subsequent classical private and symmetric key protocols. Okay. So that's the goal of quantum key distribution, which is one of the major aspects of quantum cryptography. So without much sure.
Once you establish a secret communication between two individuals with one private, is this something that stays constant or you refresh it?
Yeah, so it depends on the application, right? So typically you have to refresh it, that is called key escrow problem, because after it is used for a long time, the probability that it has become vulnerable or it has leaked increases. But that is true after many sessions and many communications. So again, still the overhead is not much. So without much deviations, let's straightforward jump into one canonical quantum key distribution protocol as a case study that will achieve sharing this common secret key K. Fine. So I will describe what is called BB84 protocol. How many of you knows about it? Can you please raise your hand if you happen to know what is BB84? Okay, good. So it is due to Bennett and Brassard, two scientists who discovered it. They discovered it much earlier, but it was published in 1984. Okay. So when it was coming up, they had very difficult time of getting their paper accepted. Okay, wherever they were sending, it was being rejected. Okay, because everybody thought it's junk, it's not usable. Okay, it's not true. Then they had an Indian friend who was organizing an IEEE workshop in Bangalore, a small-scale workshop, and that friend invited them to submit the paper. So it was almost guaranteed to be accepted, and this paper was accepted. And now it has one of the most number of citations in the domain of quantum information and quantum cryptography. You can go to Google Scholar to check the statistics easily. So typically, in this protocol, you use polarized photons to transmit the data. The data being the key bit, okay, the bits in the key. So that means you have to encode the classical bit 0 or 1 in the quantum state. And the way typically done, so you have the classical 0 that is being mapped as the computational basis state 0 state. I think these things have been covered in the morning. Okay, and I will use the and 1 that is encoded as this state. Okay, this is when you are using the computational basis. Okay, so which is called the plus basis. So pictorially, this is another representation 0, which is equivalent to, let's say, I will use the horizontal arrow to encode it, and 1 use the vertical arrow, because when this mathematical representation is actually physically incorporated into a photon, we can think of it is horizontally polarized photon and this has vertically polarized photon. Okay. So this is easy to remember. Just like in classical computing, you represent 0 and 1 by either high voltage versus low voltage or high current versus low current or a capacitor charged versus capacitor discharged. So similarly, two polarizations of photon can represent two classical information. So that's in the computational basis. So similarly, we can represent 0 as 0 plus 1 by root 2, that's in the cross basis. So using the north-east vector and 1 as the north-west vector. Observe that these two vectors are orthogonal and these two vectors are also orthogonal. Okay. So this is 0 plus 1 by root 2, this is 0 minus 1 by root 2. Okay. Now, so I have two choices. So this basis is called the cross basis in short because it represents the northeast and northwest vector, and this basis is called the plus basis in short, okay, because it has the horizontal and vertical polarization. So in order to encode say 0 or 1, I have to choose any one of the two bases, either plus or cross, and once I choose the basis, then the convention is fixed. Which photon state will I use to encode the classical bit of information? And this convention is fixed at the beginning of the protocol. It's without loss of generality because you can change 1 here, make 0 here, you can mix and match, does not matter. Once you fix it, you have to follow it. The protocol still holds and everybody knows this correspondence, including any attacker that may be present in the system. So that does not have any impact on the security. Now, you proceed as follows. Suppose there are two individuals, Alice and Bob, A and B, who wants to transmit the secret key K. Right? So I'll write like this. Let's say A, the first step. Alice or A will choose a sequence of random bits, classical bits. Okay, that can be chosen by tossing a coin locally or by running a pseudo-random number generator algorithm. Okay, there are many PRNGs in software, in hardware circuits that can generate pseudo-random bits. So that will provide a sequence of bit string which are potentially random. So without loss of generality, suppose A chooses 0, then let's say 1, suppose 1, say 0, 1, 0, and so on. Can be many things. Okay. So let me draw the column. So you can imagine that these are clock pulses. At each pulse, one bit is generated. Fine. So this is A. Next step, A. So this is the time axis for the execution of the protocol. The time is increasing this direction. So first step, second step, third step, and so on. Now A, in the next step, will choose randomly a sequence of bases, so either plus or cross. Okay, because for each one of them, Alice needs to choose one basis to represent this classical information. So again, randomly A will choose a sequence of plus and cross. That also can be generated by coin toss, head for plus, tail for cross or whatever, or by random number generator. So let's say I have plus and then cross, then say plus, cross, cross, plus, whatever, a random sequence, okay? Next step, A encodes this classical bit in this basis, right? Once I have chosen the basis, I know if I have a 0, we use the horizontal polarization, if I have a 1, we use the vertical polarization. So 0 represented in this basis is this vector, 1 represented in this basis is the northwest vector, 1 in plus basis is the vertical polarization, this is this, 1 again this, and 0 this, and so on, as per this convention here that I have already written down. Fine. Now, B will choose a sequence of, again, bases, plus or cross, okay, locally. So B does not know the random choices of A for the bits here. B does not know the random choices of A for the plus and cross here. Irrespective of those, B can locally choose a random sequence of plus and cross. Again by tossing a coin or by some random number. So let's say I have cross, then cross, then plus, plus, cross, plus, something like this. So it's random from here. So because B does it irrespective of A's choice, so B could potentially do it at any stage, at this time step or this step or this step or this step, at any one of these steps, but before the subsequent steps. Okay? So this step could be anywhere in the timeline up to here. Now in the next step, A and B they will have a public discussion. Okay. What they will do? They will okay. Before that, we will do a measurement. So these are photons in particular polarization state. So we have chosen this basis randomly. So we will measure the state of the photon in this particular basis. Okay. So what will happen? See, this vector, when it is measured in this basis, so it will, with 50% probability, it will collapse into the northeast vector. With 50% probability, it will collapse into the northwest vector. So the state is probabilistic. So I write a question mark here. Denote that it's a probabilistic outcome. For this case, with probability 1, because it is one of the basis vectors in this basis, so with probability 1 it will be northwest, with probability 0 it will be northeast. Similarly here with probability 1 it will be the state. Here again with probability half it will be horizontal, with probability half it will be vertical. So again another question mark. Here of course it's the probability 1 and probability 1. Okay. So after that, A and B will have a public discussion and they will disclose publicly what have been their sequences of the basis states. So they can pick up a unencrypted classical telephone and they can say my choice was plus cross plus cross cross plus dot dot dot, and we can say okay my choice was cross cross plus plus dot dot dot. And after this discussion, they can identify that at which position their bases had matched and at which positions they had mismatched. So the simple thing they can do is that they can discard those position or those clock pulses where their bases did not match. You see here plus and cross did not match. So they can cancel this position. Here also they did not match. These cases they happen to match, so they will retain. So they cancel. And again, here also match, so they retain. And you see that these are precisely the positions where the outcome of B were probabilistic. Because the basis that was used to encode is different from the basis that was used to measure. So they eliminate that part. Whatever is the remaining bits, because B, because it has received with probability 1 this particular state, so it can map back what is this bit. Right? So the northwest means for B it is 1. For B vertical in plus state this is 1. So again this is 1, this is 0. So it is the same bit string that A had. So it's a subset of the bits chosen by A, and this subset constitute the secret key. Fine. Now, you see, one potential attack could be done when A is transmitting the photon physically to B. At that time, an attacker, if the attacker could copy the state information of the particular photon that is traveling from A to B, if the attacker could store that information in some memory or in some device in some form, then it could break the protocol. Why? After storing that information, the attacker would let it go. B will not know anything. B will do its own job, select the basis randomly and do the measurement. But after that, when A and B will have their public discussion, when they will disclose the sequence of bases, then the attacker will also come to know where their basis had matched and where it had mismatched. And the attacker could use the common basis, their matched basis, to measure the corresponding states that the attacker has stored or copied in transit. Right? Then the attacker will get exactly these states and it will decode to the same bits. Is it clear? Or should I repeat? At least so when physically the photon is traveling from A to B, so suppose the attacker, let's say C is the attacker, right? So suppose this state is copied into C, and this photon travels to B. Okay. Now, when C comes to know subsequently from the public discussion of A and B that what were their choice of basis, then of course C will also know where they matched and where they mismatched. So C can also ignore the mismatched positions, but for the matched positions, for the corresponding cases, so for each photon that is traveling, C is copying that information, right? So for that particular photon, C can measure in that matched basis, right? And because for B, it is a probability 1 outcome. So for C also it will be probability 1 outcome, because now C and B, they are behaving identically at two different locations. They are using the same basis to measure the same state. So C will get exactly the same bit stream that B is receiving. So the key entirely will be linked. Now, one thing that comes to rescue this protocol is that at this stage, that means when this photon is in transit from A to B, the attacker actually cannot copy its state. Why?
Using quantum techniques, it will collapse when it collapse.
Not collapse. Cloning is not a measurement, or copying a state is not a measurement. It's some reversible operation. Okay, so you have some unitary operation, you have the unknown state psi, you have some initial state S, you don't know. You want to create two copies of the same state psi. So this is a Xerox machine or copying machine you can think of. This is the input state, the paper with the information. This is the blank state, the blank paper. You have a Xerox machine. The original remains as it is. You have a new copy. Okay. So it turns out that because in quantum all reversible operations are represented by unitary indices, using simple linear algebra, one can show that no such unitary can exist that can do it for an unknown state. Okay. You can, if you know the state, then you can copy. If the state is known. But if the state is not known, then no such universal copying machine can exist. So for each unknown state, you have to create a different machine so that it becomes an infinite machine. So that's not handled. Okay. by Vickers and Zurek is one of the most celebrated results in quantum information. It's only a 2-3 page paper, not long, but the implication is that in classical domain, if you have classical bit string traveling in the communication channel, or if you have a classical file, whether it is encrypted or not encrypted, whatever it is, as long as it is classical information, you can actually copy that particular data without creating any disturbance. Okay. In classical domain, you can copy the data, whether it is known data or unknown data or encrypted data, whatever it is, you can copy as it is. After copying, you may not be able to understand what is the data because you do not know the secret key, you do not know how to decipher or decode. That's a different thing, but you can copy. But in quantum domain, if you do not know the state, it is not possible to copy. Now here, the attacker has to copy during the transit, and at that point of time, in the timeline, A and B has not yet done their public discussion. They have not revealed their basis yet. So at that point of time, the attacker has no information about the basis. So if the attacker wants to copy at this stage, attacker knows that the state can be either in plus encoded or cross encoded. So that means the same bit 0 may be in one of the two possible states. So it is an unknown state and it cannot copy. And because it cannot copy, later on, even if the attacker knows what have been their choice of basis, the attacker cannot do it. At best, the attacker what can do, the attacker can measure in random basis and can resend the data. That's called measure and resend data. But then, because the attacker has to guess the basis randomly, again 50% of the time, attacker will match the basis with A. Other 50% of the time, the attacker will not match. So it will create disturbance in some of the states, not all the states. So that can be easily captured by A and B. So A and B can select a subset of these checked positions. So these checked positions will be correct key bits for A and B if there is no attacker present in the system. There is no noise in the system. But in the presence of attacker, some of these checked bits may also be altered, not all, roughly 50%, if the attacker does measure and resend data. That can be easily detected by creating another subset of these checked bits, and then A and B can reveal to each other what are the bits in that particular subset. So that will be like estimating the channel noise. Right? And they can use the same model to correct the distorted bits in the remaining unknown portion using some error correcting code. So that can be taken care of. So basically, this no cloning theorem and non-distinguishability of non-orthogonal states, that means because here the states are orthogonal, I can distinguish by measurement in the computational basis. Here the states are orthogonal, so I can distinguish by measuring in cross basis. But if I have a state from this basis and if I have a state from this basis, these two states, because they are non-orthogonal, they cannot be distinguished. So these two aspects, indistinguishability of non-orthogonal states and no cloning theorem, these two together provide perfect security to any quantum key distribution protocol, namely the VT84 protocol. So I will stop here and take any questions that you need.
Will it send plus-based encryption or cross-based encryption? Means A have to send that string, message string. So will he set plus-based encryption or cross-based so that we can verify later by discussion?
I didn't get your question. Can you repeat it?
Sir, I am saying that will he send to B?
At which stage? Yeah. The what?
Sir, he's actually asking what are the things which we discuss in public, means crosses and pluses are discussed.
Discuss in public, but not before sending. After he receives and measures, after that stage. So here, the public discussion will be here. After he has received it completely and measured. Okay.
when the B accepts the data.
You can speak louder, no problem.
Sir, I am saying that when B accepts the data, there are many points when the data is lost. Their data is lost. Just like in the two cases that you have
Data is not lost, it is either uncertain or distorted, or it has changed. Maybe 1 has become 0 or 0 has become 1.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what happens.
So, sir, in many cases that would be the case when most of the data, such as in this, out of these 6 cases, if in 4 cases that is corrected out.
Yeah, because you are fine. Because we are talking about only 6 positions, right?
Yes, sir.
But when you have a few hundred
Yes, sir.
bits, like 128 bit or 256 bits, right? So that time, because A and B are choosing their bases randomly, so roughly 50% of their bases will match and 50% of their bases will not match, right? So if they want to have n-bit key, right? So from basis match mismatch point of view, they should have 2n many photons to begin with, 2n many bits to begin with. But because the attacker may be present and noise may be present in the channel, so some of the bits may be distorted and they have to estimate the noise in the channel, right? So what they do, they initially start with 4n bits. After that, after basis match mismatch gain reduces to 2n bits. Those 2n bits again they will divide into 2 halves. One half will be used to estimate the channel. The other half will be error corrected to get it to n bits. But again, these n for error correction you need some redundancy, right? You need to add some parity bits. So precisely, it is actually 4n plus some delta amount of bits to begin with. It's 2n plus delta by 2, n plus delta by 4. That after the error correction wrapper module will be reduced to n bits at the end of the code.
Sir, is there any method to reduce this, means increase the efficiency? Because we are providing 4n plus delta amount of data and we are only getting n